Welcome. Thank you all for coming this evening. I'd like to start with a brief history on how this lawsuit came to be. In 2007, the Batavia City Council signed a 30-year contract for electricity and part ownership in a proposed coal-fired power plant in southern Illinois. They had been promised cheap, clean, reliable energy. None of this has been realized. As our electric bills increased and complaints were brought to the city's response has been, our attorneys have looked into it, it's an ironclad contract. Sorry, there's nothing more we can do. Or even worse, from some, you'll see in the long run, when ComEd's rates go up even more than ours, we'll be in an enviable position. Well, that was not good enough for Batavia businessman Joe Marconi. For those who don't know Joe, he's the owner of Gammon Corner, the Blue Colonial across the street. For Joe, he doesn't have 30 years to wait for things to get better. So he and some associates hired attorney Michael Funky to look for a way out. Mr. Funky, who's from Aurora, determined that yes, we were in a big mess, and what was needed was a class action lawsuit. So he put Joe in touch with the Chicago law firm Childress Duffy. Attorney Michael Childress of Childress Duffy hails from Aurora as well. Childress Duffy has spent the last several months researching with the invaluable help of the documentation provided by Batavia's Betsy Zinzer, who knows more about Prairie State than just about anybody. And on Tuesday, they refiled a lawsuit in Kane County. To tell you about the lawsuit, we have from the law firm Childress Duffy, attorney Michael Duffy.
Okay, let me just use that one.
Thank you for everybody coming tonight. You don't have to. No, that's okay. That's okay. Well, we appreciate everybody coming. I know there was some confusion about the time that things started, etc., and the turnout is really wonderful. And on behalf of everyone involved here, we thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. It's good to see some familiar places from other meetings, and it's good to see new faces as well. When the lawsuit came out, there was an article that was written downstate that got it, and the quote was, straight answers and a fair deal was the wording that the reporter used. The lawsuit is 137 pages in length, in terms of paragraphs, and I think it's 37 some pages in length, and it's very detailed, as pleadings have to be here in Illinois, explaining what we're doing. And as you may have heard, you may not have heard, you may have read or not, there are two aspects to this lawsuit. One is as to the consultants that were utilized, that people relied on to give them accurate and correct information about what power would cost. Promises that weren't kept, promises that weren't delivered, not only in terms of development, but also in terms of the way things were constructed and the way the power was delivered. Those currently, and there's a handful of them, those consultants currently are the named defendants upon which we seek money damages from. Money damages in terms of what you have overpaid thus far and what you will continue to overpay due to the locked-in deal, as well as the additional taxes that have been levied on you as well. The other aspect of the lawsuit takes advantage of a matter that we are allowed to do in civil procedure called respondents in discovery, and that's a formal set of words. And our lawsuit has a number of entities, including Prairie State, including the city of Batavia, as respondents in discovery. They are not officially defendants. As that lawsuit is written and currently stated, we're not seeking money damages from them. But what we are seeking is the truth. We intend to ask for agreements, contracts, correspondence, emails, all those things that lawyers like to look at in terms of documents and things of that nature. We understand that there are a lot of confidential agreements between and among a lot of entities as this was all developed and came to pass. Well, we'd like to see what all that's about. We're not going to pretend, despite the depth and the breadth of that complaint and the detail of it, and all of the work and the hours and the research that has gone into it, that we know everything, because we don't just yet. There's more to learn. And we intend to engage, as we have here, we intend to engage the power of the court, the power of discovery, the power of a court order, the power also too of subpoena. Mr. Marconi and these plaintiffs are very important people. They have acted. They have taken the courage to stand up and act, as opposed to talking, as opposed to just merely complaining, as opposed to just maybe saying, well, I guess that's just the way it is. The good guys just get hurt, and guys that can be manipulative or not be truthful get to do whatever they want. They're stopping it, and they're engaging the power of the court. And they should be recognized for their courage. It is always said, especially even with grassroots organizations, of which there are some that are involved in this as well, that have done wonderful work in terms of petition drives, in terms of trying to get people to actively talk about this, to influence politicians, to ask them questions and what happened back then. It is also important in terms of numbers that this lawsuit needs. Would ask you to consider joining us here in Batavia and enjoying the courage of Mr. Marconi and the others who have taken action. And to that end, many of you were passed out, and if not, we can get for you an envelope that has information in it on the lawsuit itself, the underlying problem, what it means to be a respondent in discovery as opposed to a defendant where we're seeking money damages at this time. What it means in terms of what we're going to try to find out with the power of the court past these confidential agreements. There are also documents within this folder about asking you to consider joining us and signing up with us and giving us your information in terms of joining and also standing up and not being allowed for this to happen in this county, in this city. That action will happen and people will be held accountable and will be held accountable through the power of the court. And I think that that outlines rather briefly what the lawsuit is about. Give me 1 second if I can. A couple questions.
Well, yeah, and then
Okay.
public comment.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, if I can, at this point in time. You've read a little bit about this and you've seen about it and others have talked about it. Rather than just me talking off of a prepared script, I don't want to do that. You didn't come here to hear that, quite frankly. Do you want to ask some questions about the lawsuit? Because I'm happy to ask them. And sometimes in a big room, we feel maybe a little intimidated to ask. And that's okay. Myself, Mr. Childress, who again, keep in mind, he is from here. His family grew up here, his mother's family, his father's family. He is passionate about this. This is his hometown, this is his community. If you don't feel comfortable in asking a question in this, let's say, open forum, there's a camera here, some press people are here and there's photos, I understand that, so does Mike. We will stay here as long as you want tonight if you want to talk privately and ask questions privately. That's okay. So don't feel any pressure to ask a question about the lawsuit here. But moving that to the side, does anybody want to ask something outside? Yes, sir, please.
What's going to happen to the electric rates in this town as the big industrial users in the industrial park start to feel the burden of these heavier electrical rates? And as they leave, so all that excess electricity gets put back on the grid, does it affect anybody?
Well, it seems like it would. It's a take or pay contract. It seems like, sadly, that's a black and white answer in terms of what exists right now over a period of nearly 2 decades. Joe, you don't have that kind of time to want to wait for that in terms of getting all that straightened out. I would imagine not. And so that being the case, I think the question is dead on. What happens if, in the hypothetical that people leave or businesses leave, et cetera, it's a take or pay contract. And certainly financial pain is being endured by the ratepayers. This is a ratepayers class action lawsuit being locked into this agreement, not being delivered what was sold, what was promised, and it is based upon a pretty black and white ironclad take or pay. Does anybody else want to ask a question? Sir, in the back with the orange shirt on first, please.
Yes, was there any concerns raised when the contract was originally entered into?
You know, keep in mind the focus of the lawsuit as to the named defendants as opposed to the respondents in discovery. The named defendants were essentially consultants to your representatives regarding the parameters of this deal. We may find that at the time they were relying on those consultants, appropriately so, in terms of what they're saying. As to your question, we don't know all the answers to that, as to what the dialogue, what the vetting process was when this deal was entered into in terms of the facts as they existed back in 2006 and 2007. So the respondents in discovery aspect of this lawsuit is very important and very critical in terms of who, what, where, when, why, and those usual questions. Sir, in the green shirt in the back, on this side, please.
Two fairly small questions. First of all, what's the venue? Are you right up at security at the courthouse?
We are in the Kane County Courthouse, and that is, and this is in Kane County, and it's in Batavia. Yes, sir, you bet.
And secondly,
Bill Murphy representing.
in Illinois, with Batavia having a confidentiality agreement and the Freedom of Information Act that we have, how does that work where a municipality can enter into an agreement and deprive us of the freedom of information?
Well, let's put it this way. That's a great question, and I should probably give a very lawyer-like answer that doesn't really have an answer, you know, how lawyers can usually be sometimes. But what I will tell you is this. Let's go back to, as I said to the gentleman who is sitting behind you to your right. Again, on yet another question for the respondent in discovery aspect of our case to find that out. How did that happen? It's one thing later if you find out that you can't do this and you can't do that, and how did that confidentiality agreement exist in a municipality, in a public forum, etc. Okay, those are fine. But with the power of discovery and court order, and as I've said, subpoena, I'm sorry that I'm sounding like I'm repeating myself a little bit, we need to find that out. Who, what, where, when, and what were the parameters. And we'd like to get behind it and see it. And it may be good information, it may not go anywhere. So what? We'll find out. Now, there was a gentleman closer to you that had his hand up. It doesn't seem to now. Before I get to you, sir, there was a gentleman back here who had his hand up. Yes, sir.
The city of Batavia is a respondent at this point in time.
Yes, they are.
And upon the discovery, it may be determined that the city of Batavia might have some exposure and might become a defendant, correct?
Respondents in discovery work the following way under our civil procedure in this state, and it's very, very unique. They get to be respondents in discovery for 6 months. That is the time that is allotted in terms of finding out information in the manner and method which I've explained a couple of times. After that 6-month period of time, the decision has to be made. Do you keep them as named defendants, or do you let them go? It gives you a 6-month period of time. And if I can just finish answering your question, it will depend upon what we find out, wouldn't it? In terms of everyone that's a respondent in discovery, both entity and individual. So rather than speculating, I want to, go ahead, and Michael wants to, and Michael's going to correct me, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, At present, we have no plans to name Batavia as a defendant. You know, we'll follow the investigation wherever it leads, but frankly, we're not looking, based on what we know so far, we're not looking at the city of Batavia as a defendant. We want them as a respondent in discovery so that we have the opportunity to get behind the confidentiality agreements that exist. In our meetings with them, they seem very receptive and willing to engage in that. But currently, they are bound by their agreements, and until the court orders them to provide the information that is subject to confidentiality, they have to withhold it. And so that is part of the reason for including them as a respondent in discovery.
But if they become a defendant, it's possible that there could be monies received from Batavia that would have to go to the lawsuit, and we, the taxpayers, would wind up having to pay for that in some fashion. So I'm wondering if it's going to come back and bite us in some way.
That would obviously make no sense, would it?
It wouldn't, but
No.
I'm not going to be involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah. Well, if you participate, you might be. You could be involved in the decision-making process. Obviously, as lawyers, we are no better than our clients and do our clients' bidding. We provide advice. I have clients all the time that don't take my advice. And then they usually come back and change their minds. But what I can tell you is it makes no sense to pursue the city of Batavia. That would be piling on. It would make a difficult situation worse. That is not what we're here for at all.
Thank you.
So, sure.
I wonder if they realize that if we do nothing, we're obligated to $250 million worth of bonds through the utility.
Yeah.
Oh, you want me to ask that question?
Yeah, go ahead, no, just go ahead, sure, and salute everybody.
I wonder if any of you realize that if we do absolutely nothing, we are obligated through the utility to $250 million worth of bonds. That comes out of our tax dollars too.
So not a question, more of a little piece of information on that, right? Do you want to continue to answer?
Yeah, there's no answer.
Sylvia like this.
Yeah.
I'll pass the microphone to whoever has
Great.
to ask the question. Do you want to say something?
No, no.
Here, Sylvia,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, if you have observations you'd like to make, or you know, information that you'd like to provide, please feel free to do it.
I thought I read somewhere that some of these other towns that were in this Prairie State deal found a way to buy themselves out of that contract. And in so doing, and they sort of raised the awareness of sort of what happened with Prairie State. Did I read somewhere that the SEC was also looking into Prairie State and alleged some, and is that an ongoing situation? And if so, if it ended, what did they find? And if not,
What we know so far about the SEC is that they opened an investigation, but we don't know what the result is. It is still open, and therefore there have been no results provided. A couple of, one municipality and one municipal power agency were able to get out of the deals that they had. The terms of their settlements are confidential, and so we don't really know it, but those will be parts of what we'll be looking into through this lawsuit.
I noticed that it's a multi-state as well as multi-city contract with the Prairie State. Are the same consultants that you were pursuing in this class action suit involved in the other states as well? Why is it just local to Kane County?
Mainly because we're from Kane County. We're focused on Batavia.
I thought I understood from your website that you were involved in a multi-state.
Not at this moment. No, we're not. We're focused on our clients here in Batavia.
Batavia is our client.
You know, there's a number of power agencies across a number of states that are involved, and we've necessarily been investigating all of them, because we really want to know what was said to who, when, that induced them to get involved in this deal. And we're not sure that the representations that were made here were the same representations that were made elsewhere. So necessarily, as part of our investigation, we'll be looking at the entire transaction, and that is in fact why we named all of the owners of Prairie State as respondents in discovery, because we want the ability to investigate the entire transaction and put together what really happened, put together the story. Did I answer your question? Yeah.
Are there other municipalities or other states that are engaging in the same type of action right now? And if there are have they already started with their actions? In other words, I think what I'm driving at is that if we're starting this now, and there's already actions ongoing as it is, we could be the last in a long line of plaintiffs against us, which means it could take years before this thing is even decided.
Yeah, I am aware of one other municipality that is retained counsel to investigate withdrawing from their contract down in Missouri. It's a rather small town down in Missouri. I know a lot of people have looked at this. I believe this is the first actual lawsuit that was filed on behalf of ratepayers. There was some litigation up in Wisconsin, but that was actually Peabody suing, or Prairie State suing a power agency. So in point of fact, you're the first. And our idea is that by being the first, there may be an opportunity for the residents of Batavia, were it to involve everyone, then everybody would be motivated to fight harder. So yeah, we don't know which direction this is going to turn. So we're keeping our options open, but you know, is it impossible for them to want to come and make peace with us to quell the what's started? It's possible. I don't think it's likely at this point. We just don't have enough information. Yeah.
So, could you refresh my memory as far as what kind of restitution you guys are looking for from these consultants? What kind of money? What
You mean the amount?
the amount? Yes.
You know, we don't have a number yet.
Okay.
It's way too early.
Okay.
A number of activities have occurred to try to reduce the impact of your cost. We're in the process of getting the electric bills from our clients and evaluating them to figure out what the true cost per person is.
Okay.
And eventually we'll do a calculation for everybody in the class, which is one reason why if you're participating, we can actually do it based on your real electric bill as opposed to a theoretical concept that'll make it more provable.
Okay.
So.
And kind of a tagline.
But the idea is to get you funds to subsidize your electric costs so that you're in fact paying what you should have been paying or what you could have been paying had you been getting it elsewhere.
Okay.
That's the whole idea.
Thank you for that answer. The other question I have is, how do we know that these consultants are going to be solvent enough to cover whatever number we ultimately come up with?
We don't.
Okay.
We don't. The way we have focused our complaint and the theory that we have pled should be covered by insurance, actually.
Okay, so they are insured?
We don't know that.
Oh, okay.
I would think that they would be insured.
Yeah.
They would, you know, they're playing a pretty big game. I would think that they would have shifted their risk to some degree.
All right.
Yeah.
Sherry Dempsey.
Yeah.
Two questions. Hypothetically, how long would you guess this lawsuit might take? And I realize you don't know. Hypothetically, that's the first question. The second question I have, very similar to his. I've been asked, if you join this lawsuit, what do you get?
Mhm.
And I'm suspecting that your answer was, you may be able to force the rates back down. Is that correct? Whereby we would then be paying less for electricity than we are today? Or is there a monetary amount that every electrical user might in fact get a check
Precisely. Based on the theories that we currently have pending, the remedy would be for you each to receive a check to subsidize your high electric rates. We intend to ask for compensation based on the 2 years that have already passed, and then projecting 28 years into the future, and then reducing it down to present value. You can see the potential for speculation there, and so we're going to obviously have to hire experts in the form of economists to do that calculation for us. So what you would, if you participate in the lawsuit, what you would receive at the end of the day will be a check. In terms of how long it could take, boy, that's going to kind of be up to the judge, isn't it? And how much he's willing to tolerate in terms of delays and avoidance and evasion. They have 6 months. We have 6 months to do our investigation. We're obviously motivated to do this as quickly as possible. You know, it could be a couple years. I don't know. Again, that's about as specific as I can be. But we believe that there's power in numbers, which is why I would think the judge would be more motivated the more people that we're representing. Yes, ma'am.
Other than perhaps by chance getting a check, is there any benefit towards the future of the energy business in Batavia?
Well, it would be our hope, and we don't have a direct shot there yet, it would be our hope that rather than pony up a check, they would negotiate. Anything can happen in terms of a settlement. And the number of constituencies that would have to agree to let Batavia out of the contract are, well, they're all parties to our lawsuit at the moment. It's not inconceivable. Certainly that would be a preferable result if they just let Batavia out and went on their merry way. That's certainly something that we're interested in looking at. But based on the theories that we currently have pending, we don't have a direct shot at that. I think it'll speak for itself, though, depending on the amount of public outcry we have. Basically, if you make enough noise, they're going to want you to go away. It's kind of simple. So, yes, sir.
As many people in this room are aware, there are those of us who have gone door to door securing signatures on a petition to ask the Attorney General's office, Lisa Madigan's office,
right,
to investigate the way this contract was negotiated.
Right.
To what extent is there a relationship between that effort and what you're doing, if there's a relationship at all?
Currently, there's not a direct relationship. It's really in the same vein of what we were talking about. We think the more voices and the more avenues that are pursued, the better. I mean, it would be wonderful if the Attorney General would pick this up. If there's enough public outcry through this lawsuit, she might be more motivated to look at it. But certainly direct efforts in the form of signing petitions and asking the city to make a request are warranted and a great idea. They're really parallel tracks at the moment. The point being to bring as much attention as possible to this issue and to demonstrate that there's a large number of people that are interested in fixing it. Did I answer your question? Yep.
Can you share with us the cost to us as consumers, what that cost would be to participate in this lawsuit?
There's no cost.
No cost at all?
None whatsoever. You would be it will cost you a little bit of your time to organize your electric bills, going back as we'd like 2 years. 5 would be better, but I mean 3 months would be great too. We understand some people aren't very organized. We'll get what we can get. And so it would mainly be your time.
Is the reason you're asking for that, I mean, is it because the city of Batavia, where we buy our energy from, they're not willing to give you that information?
No, we could get it from them too, and we will. We don't have it yet, and we want to start doing the calculation and figuring out what the equation's going to be to calculate the damages, and it's going to be very particularized. Everybody's different. You know, we've got some business owners, we've got multiple property owners, we have residences, we have, you know, other businesses. So we want to get a head start on it, on getting the facts.
liabilities or benefits to named parties
Mhm.
in this lawsuit versus just being a part of the class action?
Right. And so there'll be two distinct categories, or actually three distinct categories. There'll be the named plaintiffs, which are in the pleading that we filed. There's 9 named plaintiffs that had the courage to put their name on a document that was filed in court. There will also be people that retain us individually. One of the things that happens in a class action is the other side comes in and tries to defeat the class for a number of reasons, a whole host of reasons. And if enough people have retained us individually, it'll be very clear to the judge that even if there isn't a class certified, there's still 400 individuals that want a remedy from this judge. And so then it will become an individualized analysis. It'll be what's called a collective action rather than a class action. And a collective action is where a bunch of people join together and for a common purpose with a common nucleus of operative facts. And so that'd be category number 2. And then category number 3 will be the class members in the event that a class gets certified. You're not a class member until it's certified. And then you would participate as part of the putative class. And did I answer the question, or was that too legal? Yeah, not really.
What is certified?
I didn't tell you about the risks. Certified, so in order to have a class action, you've got to go in, and I can give you a long legal, the legal requirements, but basically, the issues have to be the same for everybody. You all have to have a common interest, which you do. You all have to have a common issue. And then the judge certifies the class because as a class, it's easier to deal with big groups than on an individualized basis. That's why we chose the class as a remedy. They don't all get certified. And of course, as I said before, there's strength in numbers, and numbers speak, so.
We're in the corner of the back.
Yep.
Since you're going after a group of consultants, do you actually have to prove there was some deception by those consultants? I mean, can they just fall back on, we're really inept?
Yeah, so they could, but we would win under that circumstance. So our theory is for negligent misrepresentation. We believe misrepresentations have been made. Whether they were negligent or something more intentional is what we don't know, and what we hope to determine through our investigation. And who exactly made them. We know for sure that the consultants advised Batavia. And so that's why we've targeted the consultants. Whether any of the other parties that are respondents in discovery participated in those misrepresentations and either did it fraudulently or intentionally, that's exactly what we intend to determine through this lawsuit. Yes, sir.
Well, can you give us an example of a similar case that you were involved with and what the outcome was?
Sure. And we've done a bunch of these. Our bread and butter is pursuing insurance companies for their handling of people, for the representations. I can tell you one. So we represented 67,000 people that were having $5 a month taken from their life insurance policies in violation of the policy, and we litigated that and settled on the day of trial for $93 million, and their agreement not to take the additional $35 million they were planning on taking. So that was an example of one result that we got.
Is there what about anything that had to do with municipalities or any government or quasi-government agencies?
I have sued over my lifetime. Actually, I was involved in a suit with Mr. Buss once, some time ago. I've sued municipalities. Well, we were involved in the St. Charles High School. I don't know if you remember the St. Charles High School case back in 2001. Yeah. So we filed that suit, and that resulted in the moldy, toxic school getting torn down and rebuilt. We did not end up collecting any money for injuries secondary to that. The main problem with that was representing teenagers and their complaints and their lethargy. Everyone knows teenagers are pretty lethargic anyway, so it was hard to prove that it was due to the mold or anything, or just teenage angst. So,
Teenage angst.
Yeah.
Good job, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Where does our elected alderman that signed this contract fit into this lawsuit?
Well,
Ask if they're here.
That's a great question. We'll have the opportunity to take depositions and ask those questions.
I mean, are they closer to a plaintiff in this case or closer to a defendant?
They are, I would probably put them or analogize them to the country of Switzerland in World War II. They may be helpful,
But if they were misled, they would fall back on that.
Absolutely. The way the case is currently styled is that the representatives of the city of Batavia were negligently the facts concerning this transaction were negligently misrepresented to them that induced them to get involved in this deal, and had, what they would have done had they known otherwise is anybody's guess. But
They did know they were buying a power plant, though, correct?
I've not talked to them directly. You would hope. You would hope. Yeah, no, I understand.
It sounds silly 3 years removed, but
Yeah.
it is a serious question.
Yeah, it's a I've looked at a lot of the documents, and it's a complex transaction, and that's why they hired consultants to advise them. I mean, this would be beyond the ken or the understanding of most politicians. That's why you hire consultants, and hopefully they give you the right answers. Yes, sir.
Was Raj Rao, who's now the chairman of Prairie State Generating, was he working for IMPA, the consultant, at the time of the original issue?
He was. He is not currently the chairman, though, anymore.
But
He stepped down.
So he went from being a consultant who advised Batavia to do this deal with Prairie State, to Batavia doing the deal, to him becoming the chairman of Prairie State.
Chairman of the management committee. Yeah.
Okay, and when, was that a paid position?
I don't know.
And when he was at IMPA, the Indiana Municipal Power Agency, is that affiliated with the state of Indiana at all, or are they under the state's control?
It's the Indiana Municipal Power Agency. It's a separately organized municipality, but yeah, it's, and he's still involved with IMPA. Are we running out of steam? Yes, sir.
This is more a personal question, understanding that I haven't had a chance to read what's in the envelope yet.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly contribute to paying the Batavia utility bill. My name is not on the bill. Does that mean that putting my name in the class doesn't mean anything?
That's a good question. I would encourage you to participate anyway, and those would be just the kinds of questions that class action attorneys for the defendants will try to attack us on. Again, as I say, there's power in numbers. If you're a Batavia resident and you're contributing, there would presumably be a remedy for you, and we're all about fashioning a remedy. Yeah, Betsy.
I have three things I'd like to say. One is.
Do you want the microphone?
Betsy, why don't you stand up? Why don't you stand up?
Karen asked about risks, and I just want to make sure that answer
Right.
is addressed.
Yeah.
And Mike had an interesting question at the beginning about what happens if a commercial entity were to leave Batavia. And I want to talk about that a little bit because I today decided that I was going to join this class, which you'd think I would have decided earlier than that, but it took me a long time. And one of the reasons I made that decision is that very question that Mike asked, and that is because if business from Batavia leaves, those power costs have to be split amongst all of us. So our burden isn't just what we carry today, it's the ramifications of what happens if businesses leave, and then their burden is shared on us, and it's going to have a domino effect, and I would like to stop that sooner rather than later. So I think that's really important that we address this head on.
Yeah.
And the second reason, though, that I decided that this was really important to sign on, and I really encourage everyone to sign on, is because I went to a NIMPA meeting yesterday. And our city representative did a really, really strong job in trying to represent Batavia ratepayers And he made some suggestions about representatives on subcommittees at Prairie State. And he was actively opposed by the representative from Geneva, and he was not supported by the representative from Rochelle. And I really feel like whether the city asks for it or not, that they need our support. And this is my way to help do something about a problem that they cannot seem to be able to solve on their own. So, back to the question on the risk.
Sure, and I'm sorry for not addressing it. The risk is that you'll waste your time. Maybe that some of your neighbors won't like you, I don't know. But there's no financial risk. You won't be called out. You won't be responsible. That falls on us. Obviously, we're spending our time and attention. We're the ones taking the risk here. But we think we're willing to do it because we think it's worthwhile. We wouldn't be here on a Thursday night talking to y'all if we didn't think it was worthwhile. That should be obvious. Yes, sir.
How many numbers do you want to see sign up?
Well, as many as possible. I can tell you, we had 67,000 for the insurance class. When we represented the nurses at Cook County, we had 4,500 out of 8,000 signed up there. TJ, how many ComEd guys do we have?
About 2,000 out of, about 2,500 out of 4,000.
We represented the linemen for ComEd versus ComEd. There's truly power in numbers, and we're in a courthouse in Kane County, and we all live in Kane County, and it's important for the judge to know that we're supported.
It really drives certification, the class, because if the numbers are large, it's easier for the judge to handle it as a class. And the defendants are going to attack not getting it certified because they don't like the numbers. Right? When you certify, it automatically includes all ratepayers. So they fight to keep it from getting certified. So if you have the numbers both ways, it's a little harder for a judge.
Certification creates great leverage in terms of our negotiating position, and it's the true battle often in these cases more than the substance of what actually occurred. If we can get certification, they'll come talk to us. We'll have great negotiating standing. Yes, sir.
So what are, you brought up that the defendants obviously don't want this to get certified. What tactics would one typically use to, like, say, change my mind to sign up for a class action lawsuit? I mean, do they?
Well, no,
they try and get us to not sign?
No, they'll make legal arguments to the court that your problem is different than his problem, than her problem, that it shouldn't really be, a class action is not the appropriate remedy.
So they don't typically address people?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Don't address to calculate your damages is different than her damages.
The class doesn't go to the court, right?
So you have to do that.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
So
Sure.
Well, my question is, we really have nothing to lose if we sign up. Because we're going to pay higher utility rates regardless. And so in a way, we may be suing Prairie State, but we're also helping the city of Batavia, the city council and everybody to get out of this mess. Whether they want to realize that or not, this is what we're really helping them, because if this class action suit wins, Batavia, the city of Batavia no longer will have Prairie State as our utility company.
That's not for sure, but potentially. So did you understand, everybody hear what she said? You have nothing to lose by signing up. To some degree, you take the heat off the city of Batavia and provide a way out of this for them. It's one way to look at it.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Does NIMCA own stock in Prairie State?
Yes.
And
NIPA is one of the approximately 20 municipal power agencies that have ownership.
okay, and does Batavia own stock in NIMCA?
They have an interest in NIPA. Yes.
My question is,
I don't know if it's stacked, it's
Why
kind of
is
edging.
Batavia charging us for the money they're paying to NIMCA when maybe it's an investment? And shouldn't be considered as part of the cost of our electric power.
We'll have to find out.
Yeah, we'll have to find out. I don't, that's a good question. Yes, sir?
Back to the respondents.
Is there a certain deadline for having people sign up for joining?
No. No. You can sit on the sidelines and wait and see. I'd encourage you not to, because it's all about generating momentum and attention and interest. And there tends to be a tipping point. There's really early movers, like our named defendants, and then there's the next people. And if you get enough people in the next wave, then you'll get a whole bunch of people. And again, this is all for the purpose of sending a message to everyone that you're united on this issue. Yes?
I'm reading your agreement here, and I just have one question. It says, if the class action is certified, attorney's fees shall be contingent. Well, wait a minute. If the litigation results in no recovery, client will not be responsible for attorney's fees. But if the class action is not certified, you get 33%, third percent. Does that mean if we join the lawsuit and it's not certified as a class, we have to pay something?
No, only if we recover.
Only if you recover?
Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay.
It's a success fee.
I wanted to make sure.
Hold it. Yes?
I just want to tack on to what Betsy had to say. One of the reasons Portola left Batavia after 100 years of being here was our power rates. That was one of the reasons they picked up and left Batavia, Illinois. And there are a number of businesses in the city of Batavia that are corporately owned, and they have already lost jobs to businesses, to other factories around the country. One of the businesses in Batavia watched the truck with the components drive past their facility in Batavia to go to a plant in Ohio and give the job because the corporate ownership said, we're not putting it here because of these power rates. So it's already happening that businesses in Batavia are either leaving or losing jobs or laying off people because of these power rates. And when you talk about restitution, there are two pieces to this restitution. We are not only paying double market rates when West Chicago is paying half of what we are paying because they have free market. We are paying every month on your bill is a PPAF, Purchased Power Adjustment Factor, and we are paying towards a $3 billion cost overrun of Prairie State that Batavia agreed to pay. So on your bill every month, there is a charge for that cost overrun, and that won't go away. There are estimates, Betsy, that factory cost overrun will go up to the $5 billion cost overrun, okay, depending on who's estimating it. That will continue to go up. Prairie State is not finished at this point. They're still not done, okay, and the fact that we're paying double. So I guess my question to you, because you talk about restitution with the economy, is there are two pieces to this. We not only want our money for the double market rate, we want the money we're paying for this cost overrun that somebody knew it was going to cost them $5 billion more than they estimated.
If there's those two components and actually more, your higher sales tax has had an impact on the quality of your life here in town. Some of the other ways that the rates have been subsidized to keep them lower for you is having an impact on the viability of your city. We're looking at all of that. Yes?
Does Family Med buy its power through Batavia or independently?
The federal government, they don't buy their power to Batavia.
Yes, Bill?
Sort of a double whammy, because we're not only users, but as property tax payers, we've got other districts, like the library district here and the school board. So we're paying our property taxes to them because they have to pay for higher electric rates as well. So is there any effort being made to get the library district, for example, since we're sitting here tonight, and to get the school district, since they want us to approve a referendum coming up in November, is there any effort made to get them to become part of the class?
We would like to get them to be part of the class. that's the whole idea between, or behind creating a groundswell. You bet. We would like everybody that's being damaged to be part of the class, including all of those entities. Everybody's, kind of taking a sitting back, let's see what's going to happen attitude, and especially people that are in politics. So, yes, sir.
I know this has been started to be talked about at the city council level, but I don't know if they've closed ranks and started to protect the guys who voted on this, but I still remember, a year ago when I was at a meeting with my dad, what was said to me when I brought this up. And I said, we're paying too much money for electric. And this was right after a huge storm one night. And I was looked at by a council member, and he looked at me and said, yeah, but when there was a big storm, our trucks were there right away. I'm like, so I'm going to pay more for electric. Because I'm like, ComEd was there too, so that's not the case. And then also to talk about a little something that Betsy said, and your reference to Portolo, that building was backfilled sort of quickly, which was good news. It was a big injection molder from Schaumburg. And the minute they found out about Batavia's electric rates, they said, well, wait a minute, we're not going to sign this lease, no way. And then they went to the city of Batavia. And the city of Batavia, what they should have done, because they wanted to get them here, they had to cut them a deal. So you look at some of your biggest power users in this town, and they're not paying the same rate as the other people. So then you ask yourself, what's happening to all that excess? And who's picking up the cost to keep a Suncast in town, to keep this new company that just moved here in town? And then you start talking about, do the math. By day, I'm an industrial broker, and I spend a lot of time in that industrial part. So first start thinking about how much of the electric used in this town is consumed over there off Verdant Road, and I would guess at least 40 to 50% of it. Okay, and I'll tell you, and I love Batavia, but it's not the easiest place to do business. It's far from expressways. You have incredibly high tax rates. Now lump on high power rates. You're going to start losing this industrial center. And it's not going to happen in 5 years. It's going to happen in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years, because people are going to move. And if that starts happening, as Betsy said, everybody's rates are going to go up, up, and up. So when you ask what are the risks if you don't join the class? Well, the risks are you're just going to keep paying more.
Otherwise, you spend more money than
I was at that same meeting Michael was at.
You remember that?
And one of our city fathers was pontificating about how competitive our electric rates were. And I'd done a study, and we were 50% higher in Batavia than ComEd and the people that lived in Assumption.
Yes, sir.
I just had a question. It was kind of follow up to some of the questions, comments that were made before. You mentioned earlier that you guys would hire an economist that would do a projection over a particular period of time. Will that economist also study the impact that this business loss will affect on all of us? Because I believe that probably is a substantial number and should be factored in. And then I guess the second question is, what can we do as a community to try to offset this? How do we stop the exodus of high electric users?
Well, I have an idea. I'm not sure that I don't mean to make light of your question. Is there anything else that can be done? I don't honestly know as I'm standing here. I'm a lawyer. I sue people to get remedies. That's what I do. I've been doing it for 33 years.
And the other way is the power of your vote.
Right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Going on what they were just talking about now with this, the rates, loss of business and everything else, and obviously deals that are made from the city council, which is their own business right now, and we'll find that out later. Is there anything also projected to protect us? Because if they let us out of this whole contract deal, this village is going to be up for grabs for anybody who wants to come and try to sell us power. And they're going to be on the upper hand saying, we're charging this because we know you don't have another provider. Are we going to be protected by that also through this kind of speculation?
That's a little beyond the scope of what I can talk about or know about. I would think somebody would be thinking about that. It certainly would be prudent. I don't know, is the honest answer. And sir, I didn't answer your question about what the economist is going to look at. The answer is, of course, we're going to look at the entire impact, the entire financial impact here. way of life. Yes, ma'am.
Since you guys have brought attention to this class, has the city done anything? We have a lawyer, a city lawyer. Have they done anything to look at this and being misrepresented and, you know? I'm sorry? He's the one that signed it.
The lawyer?
This current lawyer signed it? I thought so.
No.
I don't think it was this lawyer.
No.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what the city's doing in response. I can tell you that I went and met with them, and they were as open as they could be. We're hoping they can be more open once we get behind the confidentiality agreements and have the information to ask them the real questions we wanted to ask. But they were not negative, they were not dismissive, at least when I met with them. It's early in the process. Yes, Jeremy?
I've got one question. I'm not sure if I have my facts right. I heard that Batavia has agreed to pay for a certain amount of power, whether they use it or sell it. That's right.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It is.
And I heard at City Hall that last year or the year before, it cost them $1.2 million out of their reserves to pay Prairie State for power that we didn't use, but we had committed for. Is that correct? And if that is correct, then everybody in this room ought to be signing up,
Yeah.
because this is a runaway freight train.
It's a take or pay contract, which means that the ratepayers have to pay whether the power is received from Prairie State or not. You bet.
Into a set amount, and if you don't use the amount, they have to go in the open market and sell it.
Right.
And the open market is, a third. So we're paying for here, and they're selling it,
I sell low.
yeah.
That's a great business strategy.
If we're shareholders in Prairie State,
Yeah.
at the end of the year, is there a profit? While this municipality is paying all this money.
You're not shareholders in Prairie State. NIPA is,
Oh.
the Northern Illinois
What do
Power
we own
Agencies.
15% of?
Your interest is in NIPA.
I thought we owned part of the plant.
NIPA does.
Yeah.
NIPA make money?
I guess we're going to have to find out.
Not so far. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
As a 27-year resident of Batavia and a citizen, I think it would be remiss not to recognize a couple of people. I know they've been mentioned, but Betsy Zinger for her years of research in this issue, and Joe Marconi for standing up and making something really happen where most people just go to coffee shops and complain about things and never take any real action. So actually, I would like to give a vote.
By the way, I read in the New York Times this morning that we have plenty of gas. And as gas goes down, I'm talking about gas, as gas goes down, so does electric rates.
Oh, yeah.
So we've been at it here for a little over an hour now. Why don't we wrap it up? We'll stay to answer your questions. Why don't we take maybe 2 more questions? Yes, sir.
Let me see, what was I going to ask? Oh, yes. Each of us in this room received an envelope which gives us an opportunity to join the class.
Right.
My guess is that if everyone in this room joins the class, that still falls far short of the number of participants we'd like to see in the class. So well-organized efforts are ongoing to secure an additional participants in the class.
This is just the start. As events happen, we'll do more of these public meetings, public service meeting. Okay.
And
Go ahead.
also on your material, there's a website, you can go in there and register,
Right.
and you can indicate you'd like to participate, and we'll call you.
Yeah.
We have called everyone so far, and,
Yeah.
we will continue doing that.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it's really important to get all these corporations that are in town, like Panera and Walgreens
Yep.
and all of them behind this. So you guys have a way to get into these people to get, because you gotta go to the headquarters, you can't go to the store manager. So there should be a action plan to get up to the top, because Target.
Agreed. Agreed. We're working on it.
We'll get it.
Okay.
You bet.
Could we do a door-to-door campaign, or in any of our businesses have a paper where people could sign up? And I think
Sure.
that's another way of getting, quite a few names.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. We're getting toward 8 o'clock, and we greatly appreciate your time. If you want to stay, we'll stay. But one of the things that you heard as a theme throughout the entire evening, no matter what the questions were, what was the theme? Strength in numbers. They can't do that to us in Batavia, in Kane County. And so assisting in regard to your own participation and the participation of others, like any other type of organization that runs parallel in terms of the Attorney General's participation or in terms of grassroots organizations, in terms of the vote, as Mr. Laux, our partner, pointed out. This is Thomas Laux, incidentally. He is our partner, an managing partner of our firm, as he pointed out as well. Strength in numbers, and also, too, having the courage to be part of the solution. Thank you very much for coming this evening. We'll stay as long as you need.
Say one thing.
Okay.
Ladies
and gentlemen.
My name's Yvonne Dinwiddie. I think a lot of you may know me, and I've done a lot of organizations and a lot of petition drives. This lady up here has a whole bunch more of those envelopes. One way we can get more participation in this lawsuit is maybe take a few of those envelopes and see if you can get your neighbors to sign up. That would help.
Thank you so much.